dedicated to geeks and nerds. You're listening to Project I Radio, 24/7 Nerdgasm.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the bizarre and weird fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Frank. Welcome back, Zongers. It's been a great pleasure doing this podcast for you every week. But, man, every week, it seems like forever when you're having this much fun doing a podcast. So let's get back at it. You know, the beauty of doing this podcast is that I get to talk to some really great Bizarro writers week after week. And it's been, you know, an added benefit of doing this show to pick up a lot of knowledge from these people and what they're doing, how they approach writing, how they approach Bizarro, and how they approach the business of writing. Fantastic stuff, and I hope to keep that in mind as I present to you our next guest, a person who I had the opportunity to meet last year. He was a relative unknown at the time at the con we met at, CrawlCon, and not long after CrawlCon closed out, he blew up with a book that, technically speaking, he didn't write. It was one of these weird erotica novels that went crazy viral, blew up. It was just reported all across the internet, and it got him a lot of fame in a short amount of time, but it wasn't even really him. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast one Mr. Christoph Paul and his alter ego, Mandy DeSandra, who herself did not appear on the show, but he speaks for her since she lives somewhere deep down in the cockles of his bowels, or somewhere probably we don't want to go, but she's there and he speaks for her. Since then, he's really used the fame he got from the Mandy DeSandra book, Kirk Cameron and the Crocoduck of Chaos Magic, and he's really used that to hone his own Bizarro writing career. He's come out on the new Bizarro author series with his own book, Slasher Camp for Nerd Dorks. And he's just doing a ton of stuff based off of this, you know, this opportunity he was given on a book going viral that he wrote. So we're going to talk about all of that and what he's doing and how he's handling all the notoriety he's gotten over the last year. With that in mind, Zongers, I present to you the Bizzong interview of one Mr. Christoph Paul. All right, so I'd like to welcome to Bizzong this week the one and only, the rocket ship of Bizarro, Mr. Christoph Paul. Welcome to the show.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, Frank. It's good to be here.
Great, glad to hear it. Now, I tell you, you're the rocket ship of Bizarro because since I met you last year, you have had so much stuff blow up for you in a big, bad way. How do you, what's happened in your career that you're just blowing up? Where did you start a year ago, and how'd you get where you are?
You know, it's funny because I think it was at like CrawlCon where we met, and I was like, honestly, I'm gonna keep it real. Like, I'm at this point. I've been working so much, I don't even have a filter anymore. So this will be a good interview because I'm not even censoring myself. So like,
yeah, don't do that.
Time, like a year ago at CrawlCon, I was coming out of a really bad depression. I was actually depressed as fuck for a good 9 months. Before that, I literally just right around April, because I think CrawlCon was like April 20th. It was like somewhere around that time last year.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I was in like a bid funk, and I had writer's block, and I mean, I just, then I finally, I got on, I got help for depression, and like, I'm like, oh, I can still write, and then I just started writing a ton, and about 2 months after that, I wrote Crocoduck, which really fucking just changed my life, and then I just kept rolling. I read Great White House at like a conference, and this woman's like, this is really funny. Can you do stuff like this that's a little more accessible? I'm like, yeah, I have, some YA, bizarro YA stuff. And I pitched her, and she became my agent, and, did a book with Eraserhead. It's crazy, man. It's like, I really, if I have any message, man, it's just don't quit. Because I came really close to quitting. Like 6 months before all that shit, I was like, man, I'm just done. I don't think this is ever going to happen for me. And then I just stopped caring, and I just focused on the work. I got some mental health shit fixed, and I don't know, man. I'm just riding it out. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like like that actor who just starred in like 20 shitty movies and then finally got like a big break. So he's just taking every job he can take. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm just riding up the storm. That's where I'm at.
It's a perfect analogy. Like you said, I first met you at CrawlCon, and until then, I saw your name popping around in the Facebook groups and whatnot, but I wasn't quite sure what you did. And I picked up your book, The Great White House, there. And I think it was probably the first book I read after CrawlCon, and I was like, holy shit, this is it was a lot of fun to read.
Yeah.
And,
thank you.
It's, for me, political stuff, I really, anything, I shy away from. So I wasn't sure how I was going to take the book, but you played that. It was purely funny. Everybody dies, Republicans and Democrats alike. It's not political, so there's no political bend to it. It's just everybody's going to die, and it's a lot of fun to read. And then just to see you after that, like you said, blow up with your Mandy DeSandra stuff, and then beyond that, you keep crawling even under your own name.
Yeah. I feel like a nice balance is happening. I'm happy with Slasher Camp for Nerd Dirks came out. An anthology that was like 2 years in the making, and Speaking of Great White House 2, I did the final edit, to yesterday, so that's coming out next month. Billary Bites Back, so it's a really good fucking sequel. I gotta say, I'm pretty proud of it.
I'm hyped up to see it. Do you? You read that, and obviously you think it's sort of, Sharknado-ish, shall we say?
Mm-hmm.
Did you take influence from the Sharknado? Is that like kind of you were lampooning
in the first book? Yeah, and the first book was really like my attempt at. I didn't even know what Bizarro was when I did that, and it was an interesting time to write Great White House. I wrote Great White House, and like, I didn't know what Bizarro was. I just was like, I want to put. I want to put grindhouse stuff with satire, with weird shit, with postmodernism. I was just like looking at it like all that, and then somebody told me I'm Bizarro, and I looked and I found this whole genre had existed, and because I'm an East Coast guy, it just wasn't, and I was in New York at the time, and there were, you didn't hear of stuff like that. Either you wrote literary fiction or you wrote YA in New York, or you wrote like really. Esoteric small press stuff.
Yeah.
And I just was a weird combination of these things. And I hit reader's block too. I hit like a bad reader's block. I remember that. And I read Carlton Mellick. I checked his book out. And I loved it. I'm like, this is very much what I'm about. I love really tight storytelling, but something that's fucking interesting and good character to everything serves the plot. Everything serves the character. Like, My mentor was he was a documentary filmmaker, so I'm a big story guy, and that's like what excites me is like just making the tightest, most entertaining story possible with a very memorable character I can always have empathy with. And I was going on a rant, but yeah, that's kind of how Then a couple years later. I have helped spread the word of this movement. I didn't even know existed.
The question sort of comes up, and I always ask, what is Bizarro to you?
That's a good question. I mean, what's funny is like when I stopped worrying about trying, once I'm like, oh, this is what I am, and then I tried to be that, it just kind of fucked me up. I really try to avoid labels, but yet you need them to market things. And that's the thing. It's like, I like. I mean, I've done actually like for like a literary journal. I wrote like what I think Bizarro is, and then I kind of thought about myself, and like I thought, what am I really doing here? Like, what makes? And there's so many different. Like, there's definitely people of the absurd school and surrealists, and there's there's people more of like a more plot centered, like storytelling, like sci-fi Kilgore Trout thing. I mean, for me, it's like I just think it's like I have this combination of I want to tell really 3-act strong structure stories, have it and like kind of take from these different genres that I don't mix. I take a little bit from postmodernism, a little bit from satire. Definitely South Park's an influence on me. And I like the term genre fucker, really. I'm just kind of bending a genre until I make it into something I want it to be. And that, for me, makes me feel at home in Bizarro. Because, I mean, like, Slasher Camp for Nerd Dorks is part dystopian YA, part horror book, part satire, part, dealing with trauma, So it's like, you can't really say there are all those 4 things, and it's just like, well, it's Bizarro.
Yeah, that's sort of the theme that always comes up when I ask that question. It's no one thing. It's like you said, it's a genre bend. It could be a Western, it could be a sci-fi, it could be horror, but there's always this sort of weird aspect that comes into it.
Yeah, I don't even think that's what's fun. It's like I don't really think a lot of stuff I do is weird. I don't think in that way. I just think this is interesting. I'm just like, even the Mandy stuff, it's like, I guess it's definitely weird, but I'm just, what's interesting to me? And it doesn't always have to be weird for me. I mean, I write in YA. I'm working on, a YA thing. That's pretty much more pure YA, but it's really just about what's interesting to me. And if adding weird elements makes the story more interesting, then I'm game. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't know. I mean, I stopped really worrying about the labels of shit, man. I really did. Even like with Bizarro, you can do that. You can be like, is this Bizarro or not? It's like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm just going to write the story I think is the most interesting and entertaining and most heartfelt. And, I mean, like the Buddha talks about, I'm getting pretentious here because I'm quoting the Buddha, but like, you need the raft to get there, but don't like become part of the raft, and that's kind of like the paradox, I think, with Bizarro. Like, it's just a term to help you get to where you need to go to, but you don't have to, like, become obsessed with being that term. Really, it comes down to just fucking write your thing and what you think is interesting. And I think Bizarro is just the genre that really, really encourages that more than other ones. And I can say that. I mean, some of the YA stuff I have to write, it is very, like, this needs to happen, this needs to happen. There, you have to kind of do the opposite.
It's almost as if the community puts the label on you. Everybody just writes what they write, and it's almost a community thing. Like, no, that guy's kind of Bizarro. You don't like consciously do it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I remember like reading in New York, right? And I wrote some weird shit. I remember like writing. I wrote this like about these pigeon pimps, and it was just this, which would be Bizarro. I did not know this. I just really wanted to tell a story about a pigeon pimp, that lived in New York and like trying to just get enough breadsticks and like, basically tell a really gangster fucking story, but with pigeons. And I remember reading that and they're like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Like, they didn't know what to call the genre. And that's a cool thing, but also from a marketing standpoint, a bad thing, because it's like, if you can't say what the hell it is, nobody knows what the fuck it is. So I think Bizarro is a nice way to market stuff that's just, if you're looking for something, I think it all comes down to, is this weird? Is this weird and interesting? And if, enough people feel that, they're going to label you Bizarro. And it's not a bad label to have.
Do you think if Bizarro got more mainstream, something blew up and became more popular, do you think that would help the genre, or do you think that would hurt the genre?
I'm for like reaching as many people as possible. I don't hide that. I think it would always help. I think I think like the thing I'm working on now. I mean, not Great White House, but I feel what I do is pretty much YA Bizarro when it comes down to it. I mean, I remember, I don't think that anthologies even exists anymore. But I remember writing a story. I wanted to write a YA. It was like it was a YA Bizarro anthology, and it just clicked with me because that's the two schools that I feel most at home with. And my agent's like, the one thing I'm working, she's like, I think we can actually sell this. You know, I don't mind that it's weird. I kind of like it. I think Bizarro will hit mainstream in the next 5 years. That's just my feeling. I mean, Carlton got his book in there, and I think it's always a good thing. You know, I think the more audiences you can reach, the better. I think young people really like fucking Bizarro. I mean, I remember being at the Miami Book Fest, and like all these like teenage kids were picking up, you know, Slasher Camp. They were even picking up Mandy books, but I couldn't. I did sell a few to them, even though that's probably wrong. But yeah, I think it's a fun genre, you know, and I'm seeing it more, and you see it more in mainstream televisions, maybe not super mainstream, but like something like Man Seeking Woman. That's really, really Bizarro, that TV show, and I don't know. I think even the success of Deadpool just shows, which wasn't that different. It was still a superhero movie, but there was like, you know, an interesting meta-ness to it. It's like the mainstream audiences move very slowly towards stuff that I think the indie and the small press world are doing, and little by little they kind of like will get a taste of something and they'll like it. But yeah, I'm sure a book will break through. I mean, there already has been, but I think people like things that are fun and entertaining, but yet have great heart and catharsis. And I think Bizarro is a very great genre to write books like that. So I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I by and large, I sure do hope so. It's why I started reading Bizarro, because I read it and it was like nothing I had ever read before.
Yeah.
It was so daring and different, and you know, that's I just naturally gravitated. I had to find out more of it. Now, you just said something that I've never heard a Bizarro, quote-unquote, Bizarro writer say before yet. You have an agent.
Yeah.
Is that that's not something, is that something a lot of Bizarro guys do have, or you think you got something a little different going on there? What's going on with that?
I don't know. I mean, I know there's a few that do. I mean, I got, you know, that's just luck, man. It's like, that was just fucking being really lucky. I mean, that was just the right place, right time. You know, the Mandy thing didn't hurt. I heard the person read it. I also had a book that wasn't Bizarro that she's like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to take you on. You can do different things. I don't know yet. Like, that's my thing. I realize, okay, I can. There's two genres I think I can write pretty well. One's Bizarro, one's YA. I'm at my happiest when I can combine those two. You know. And YA is just for me, it's just dealing with teenage shit. And I like teenage shit because I had a fucked up teenage life. I mean, I went to rehab, I went to military school, so like young people is always interesting to me. I'm not like, oh, let's make money, right? YA. Like, I am genuinely interested in the teenage life because I'm still dealing with the shit that happened to me. So I think agents just want shit that can make money. So she saw, oh, he could write YA. Oh, he writes this weird shit. So she's like, you know, she's going to shop around the treatment for Slasher Camp. Because it's like, why not? You know, yeah. I don't know what will happen with it. I don't know. I don't really think about that. But yeah, it's true. I think that's kind of new in that regard. Bizarro's been more of like a very small press oriented genre. You don't really need an agent. But it's pretty cool to have one. It's cool to have somebody just saying, okay, that's a good idea. That's not. Yeah, do that with a small press, but maybe we should try this with a big 5. It's good to have somebody who has, you know, an interest in helping you make money and you know, seeing your books reach more people. It certainly sounds like it couldn't hurt at all to have one. No, it doesn't. Now, you brought up this the YA and the connection to your own past
sounds like something you're pretty passionate about getting across.
Yeah.
Is that something you do as a catharsis for you, or is it something you want to help younger folks to steer clear of mistakes have made?
I mean, I don't write from I'm gonna be honest, I don't write from like a moral place of like, I mean, this is for me. I do this to feel better. This is a form of medicine. I'm not thinking, oh, let me help the fucking children. I love children, but I'm like old dirty bastard. Like, whatever about the children. I'm not thinking in that mind. I'm thinking of dealing with something probably on the subconscious level and making an entertaining story, and it sort of beautifies it. I mean, the last book, Slasher Camp for Nerd Dorks, it's tough because like I feel like a lot of people feel it's a very goofy book, but man, it's the most personal, heart-wrenching book I probably will ever write. And that was, basically a book with a bunch of 13-year-olds, at a at a camp that encourages slashing. That I got to get a little more in detail about that. But yeah, it's that's just what's interesting to me. Stories involving teenagers is just more interesting to me than adults, unless it's kind of like a satirical place. I'm not as interested in 30-year-olds. I'm just not. I'm interested in kind of those high emotions teenagers have, and feeling powerless and being kind of fucked by the system, and how you find meaning and peace in that, and find this kind of inner strength you're gonna need to just not say fuck it, and God knows where you go.
Yeah, a lot of people think of YA as sort of just cheesy teen pop stuff, but I'm sure what you have is pretty deep adult level sort of YA examination of life. I
like combining things that don't mix together. So I was just like, that's what I've done. I was like, I like to combine YA and Bizarro, and I'd like to combine erotica and Bizarro. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I think if I had to put a label on it, I like just mixing things together. I'm a musician. I've done that before. I tried to mix. That didn't turn out as well. I tried to mix grunge and doo-wop. I like mixing things that don't really you think belong together and making them work. And I remember Brian Keene talking that Bizarros are genre fuckers. And I really love that term. I love Brian Keene. He's been a cool mentor. I was the guy I turned to with the whole Mandy thing. We can get into that later. Like, what do I fucking do here? Do I say I'm Mandy? Do I not? But I love that term. We're the genre fuckers, because I love just kind of taking a genre and bending it. And that's what's awesome about Bizarro. Something like YA, which we think is lame and we think just is fucking like, I don't know, some Taylor Swift bullshit, can also be a way to really tell some fucked up shit. Slasher Camp for Nerd Dorks is pretty much a book about sex abuse and fascism, and that was pretty much, and like the grief of a parent dying, but taking kind of YA tropes and kind of a Bizarro mindset, I created something I feel really proud of. However that book does 5 years from now, I always feel proud of that book, just for the emotion that was in it and the story, the tightness of the story, and it was something new and interesting to me.
What does that book and being in the new Bizarro author series have done? Because you were already kind of making a name for yourself before that book came out. What does that book add to the equation?
It's really cool. I love. I've always had a love for Eraserhead. I'd say the presses that really inspired me were Eraserhead, Akashic. I love Dynatox too. Those would be the three like small presses that I've really just love what they do. Like for the last 5 years. And it was another book. Garrett approached me, and I had another Bizarro book in mind, like for a later project that I don't want to say too much about, but I was like, I'm game. Yeah, let's do this. Like we just both thought this, slasher camp idea could be really great. I mean, I didn't have that much time to write it, but I fucking went for it. I mean, it was a rough time. My mother was pretty much like, I knew she was going to be dying, which I laugh about it now, but it was horrible. I mean, it was a rough time to write that book, and I just thought this would be a great way for me to just really write something personal. I've worked with Garrett before, and just I went for it, and I've had a few long-term fans, like people who've read my the Passion of the Christoph book. And I think this is your best book. It's at least story-wise, the most heartfelt and most interesting, and that made me feel good.
Now, I guess we can move into some Mandy territory, because that's, I guess, more than anything, is what changed your whole writing path.
Yeah,
how did
helped.
I mean, how did that even start?
All right, so Mandy, the Crocoduck was not Mandy's first book. A lot of people don't know that. I decided to write a book about masking, which is a fetish for. There was a documentary about real living dolls, which are guys that like to dress up as female dolls. And I wanted to write an erotica about that. And I'm like, I can't write this by me. So I came up with this name, Mandy DeSandra, and I wrote this novelette about masking called the Masquerade Ball in DC, but spelled like mask. And it did okay. It didn't really do much. It was a fun experience, but I built a Twitter feed for it. I tweeted a little bit, then I stopped. Then I went through that really bad period of depression where I want to say one thing. During the depression, I actually did write a lot. I just didn't write anything I liked, but that was a good thing. The actual writing itself was good. I just kept writing, and then I got out of the depression. I was kind of getting my speed back. I'm like, all right, I want to write Great White House 2. I'm feeling good about it. But I thought, you know what, to get myself ready, and that's the crazy, beautiful thing about this. I thought, let me just write something really fun and goofy. And I just got this idea. Ray Roski, I've never say her, put a picture up of Kirk Cameron holding a Crocoduck picture. And, I've interviewed a lot of the weird erotica writers. The dinosaur girls, taken by the T-Rex. And it just hit me. I'm like, what if I bizarroed this? What if I actually just tried to write a bizarro erotica book? Write a bizarro erotica book, basically. Take Bizarro and put it toward weird erotica with Kirk Cameron and a Crocoduck. And I just thought, this is such a fucking ridiculous idea. I didn't think anybody would really read it. I just thought it was a really awesome idea. It got me really excited. And I outlined it for a week, and then I took another week to write it. And then I just edited it and put it out, not thinking much. I tweeted it as Mandy, and it just fucking blew up, man. I mean, it's a really beautiful, magical thing to think about, because it's just art's crazy that way. You think you think, and I literally did it just to get myself ready to write another book. So I didn't have any expectations. I didn't care. I just wanted to write the most entertaining thing to myself and something fun. And, I wrote this novelette and put it out, and dude, it went fucking viral. It just went viral. It was insane. I mean, for a week, I felt was like a midlist celebrity. It was nuts.
What was the first outlet to really get the ball rolling on that going viral?
It was Friendly Atheist, I think it was, on pathos.com, and then Wonkette. They both said something about it. And I was like, oh, cool, wow. I didn't think it was going to keep rolling. And then all of a sudden, AV Club did, Gawker did, then Jezebel. And then Vice did a column later on. It was just nuts. I mean, it really came down to the media. The media made this book. It's kind of, instead of paying a bunch of people to promote this book, they did it for me. And I like to say, oh yeah, I totally knew what I was doing. I mean, I had a Twitter presence. That helped. So, I mean, more people were able to see this. And it's the right people looked at it, I guess, and they all just decided, okay, this is the story for the week. And, a lot of people read it. even with the fucking grammar mistakes, because I edited it myself, which you should never do, but I just, like, I thought it would be more authentic to Mandy DeSandre, so I'm like, I decided not to even have Lisa, my girlfriend, edit it. I'm just like, yeah, I'll just put it out, make it more authentic. That's how most of these, like, erotica things are. So I really just had fun with the genre of weird erotica, and it still did, it's still, like, really, really well reviewed, even though, like, I don't even care about the grammar, the spelling mistakes. I love it. Like, it just hit the right nerve, it just hit the right nerve, and I was just like, fuck this, I'll keep writing these, if people will read them, I'll keep writing them. So I've done 10 chapbooks, I guess, or like around 10 novelettes and a collection, a novella. I've done about 13 books, I think as Mandy DeSandre, which really does blow my mind. But yeah, it'll be 14 soon.
Man, I can't even begin to wrap my head around just the whole thing. Like, first, when all the Bigfoot stuff and the dinosaur stuff was coming out,
yeah.
I was... It irked me. It bothered the shit out of me, that stuff. Like, it just seemed pointless.
Yeah.
I'm like, nobody's jerking off to this. Why are we calling it erotica? The damn things are 10 pages. You charging me $5. Like, everything about it just pissed me the fuck off.
Yeah.
And if anybody asked me, I went berserk on this shit, and I couldn't take it. But then, right around that time, I don't know if you were the first one. You might have been not the first one, but there were a lot of books getting that viral. For Leonard Delaney was another one who got, like, huge recognition just from going viral like that, and it seemed there for a while, for a few months, it was like news outlets were started looking for these books and trying to make them go viral, because it must have been big for them also, making these crazy titles go viral. And obviously, like you said, there was a lot of money to be made off of very minimal input into the marketing. But through that, I also got to appreciate a little better that it's not necessarily what I thought it was at the beginning, and it is this sort of just wacky art form. And we had a chance a couple weeks ago. I talked to Don Noble and Nick Day, who are in charge of New Kink Books, and they're doing the same thing. And
Mandy put a book out with
them.
Yeah.
And they really, I didn't even intend to talk about it much, but we got into this whole big long conversation about it, and they did help turn my mind. I keep turning on it and at least appreciating it more.
You hit a good point. There was, I won't say the person's name, but, something switched in me where instead of looking why this is shit, I just started getting interested in why does this work? And that was a really big step, I think, in me as a writer. Because it just made me, instead of like, because like I was very snobby at one time in my, like, I mean, I used to write literary fiction, like serious literary fiction. I wrote a book called Prophet. Like, what would a 21st century prophet do? It's pretentious as fuck. Like, but I spent like years on this book. So I was a really big snob before I started writing this. Like, I went through that phase where I'm like, I need to be a serious writer. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like a white 20-something male thing. We just, like, not all guys do, but we go through this phase where, like, I need to say something serious, and like, I went through that, and then I dropped that, thank God. But even I'm like, let me go further. Like, I started, like, there's this person, I'm like, man, this writer sucks. Like, how are they having such great sales? And I just looked at what they did. Instead of just, like, instead of, like, what I hated about the book, I looked for what works here. What is connecting to people? What can I take from this and add to, like, writing I think is cool? So I've really changed my mentality about looking down, because, like, that's the one thing too. I've been looked down upon, like, the stuff I write, and I'm like, I'm probably doing this to, like, the dinosaur people, like, it doesn't feel good when you're, like, looked at as, like, the hack writer. So I've had literary fiction people, like, they'd see Great White House and, like, oh great, this, why don't you write serious literature? And, like, that's the one thing I've realized, like, nobody really has that coin. Nobody really has, anything's as serious as you make it. So I started, like, when I looked at things and, like, saw what worked and just looked at their positive attributes, it really changed my mind. It made me see less like a tribal look at what's good and what's bad, but just what's interesting and what's not, and what can I learn from these type of artists. I mean, I'm from the get-go. I mean, I interviewed these two women. Oh God, Their names are escaping me. But they write the dinosaur erotica. They really started the fucking dinosaur erotica thing. I mean, these girls wrote, they're two, they're college students at Texas A&M, and I interviewed them, and they wrote, Chrissy Sims and Alara Brana, and they wrote, and like, interviewing them and like seeing the kind of humanity to it, it really changed me, because I'm like, holy shit, like, for all the shit like a lot of us writers talk about, these two women are working their fucking asses off. Like, they are prolific as hell. They are writing week after week. They're putting out a fucking dinosaur sex book. And the work ethic really impressed me. I mean, it was kind of, I wasn't really that inspired by dinosaur erotica, but I think somewhere it kind of planted the seed, like, what if I could take this stuff that I'm not find that interesting, but put a bizarro element to it? And that kind of clicked. That's what I think the Mandy thing was for me. It was like taking the bizarro spirit and putting that to even weird erotica, which, I mean, you think, why do that? It's already weird, but bizarros, I don't know. It adds this weird, fun element when you throw it into the mix to even something that's already weird.
Yeah, and I think the question needs to be asked here.
Yes.
You've written about, obviously, Kirk Cameron, but any of your other Mandy books, has any of the targets, so to speak, gotten word of this? Have you ever heard they got word of it?
No, I mean, I got one shut down by, he's not really that big of a celebrity, but I just love the idea. The Mark Dice book, Mark Drake, what was it? Drake Hotline Blinged in the Butt. By Drake Hotline Blinged Mark Dice in the Butt, or it's some ridiculous title. But yeah, Mark Dice, like, I got an email from, Create Space, which I published the Mandy stuff myself, and it showed me the email, and it was Mark Dice. He made sure that I took all my stuff down from Twitter, that talked about, him getting him doing gay stuff with Drake, and then I just republished it, saying that there was actually a message from the Illuminati itself. So there's a book with Mandy and the Illuminati called a message to Mark Dice from the Illuminati and other gay stories. And he can't take it down because I put like a forward by the Illuminati saying this is not about Mark Dice, but it is. Like, I just put this ridiculous thing to it. So that's the only one I ever really had any issues with. I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of getting tired of writing more celebrity based stuff. One that did really well was it was like her sixth one, City on Fire, the erotica novel, which was like a parody of this like really lame literary novel that came out. That did really well. I don't know. The Mandy thing, I'm going to keep doing it. I enjoy doing it. I think the latest one was the best one. Tila Tequila Fucks the World Flat. It's a really good. It's not getting that viral sensation. Like, I think that, but it's a really good story. And I think the beauty of Mandy Desandra is I'm able to practice my writing while making money at it. These really are exercises to me in writing a really fun, entertaining story that happens to have sex in it, and it's really weird, like bizarro story, in a short amount of time, and I'm really just focusing on telling a very tight, entertaining story and doing it in, as fast as I can. And, that's not a bad thing for a writer to have. It's a great thing for a writer to have, but, to find a way to practice, because I mean, that's what I'm seeing. You just get better by writing. The more you write, the more you get better. There is, and I remember Carlton Mellick mentioning this, and I really agree that like quantity can actually really help your quality. You don't have to publish everything you write, or even search. I mean, I finished a House of Cards kind of parody by Mandy, and I was just like, you know what? I don't really feel this. I don't think this is that. I like that I finished it. I like the story I told. I love the voice I created, but it's just, for me to, revise this would take way too damn long, and this doesn't need to be out there. So I actually do have quality control with Mandy. it's helped. Mandy DeSaunders helped Christoph Paul be a much better writer. I mean, I'll be interesting. I'll ask you sometime. I mean, with Great White House 2, it is a much better book. It's just better writing, better story, and I like Great White House. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good book, but like, it's just 10 times better than what I've done. So it's like, by writing all this as, in these different genres, it's just really helped me improve and what I love to do, which is write, so Mandy's, the quantity I write as Mandy is helping the quality of Christoph Paul.
I love that. I love that take of taking, like you said before, taking the positives of what that is. And like you said, you're looking at it from a craft point of view. The writer writes always.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess, because of the nature of what that silly erotica is. Like you said, you self-publish it. It doesn't matter. Nobody seems to even care.
Yeah.
So you can actually spit out like your practice work in a way, and make money off, and make more money off of it than what your regular
Pretty much.
stuff is.
I mean, it's a good deal. I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to do it now, which is, I'm like, man, it's going to get crowded here, but that's okay too. Competition I think is good. I don't see myself ever in competition with other writers, but I think just for readers' attention, it's good. I think anything that helps improve quality in the written word, it's always good. I always feel like these stories are always entertaining. They're tightly written. They're always interesting. They're always weird, like stuff that blows my mind. Like the thing with Mandy stuff is, if I'm not having fun writing it, it's really not going to be that great of a story. That's been my experience with the stuff that doesn't really pan out. So I take the method of just really writing and trying to increase my stamina and approaching it almost like an athlete. I mean, I'm not really into sports like myself, like playing them, but I try to like look at writing now like that. And the Mandy stuff helps me just stay loose. It helps me stay loose too. That's the other thing. It's like when you get caught up and like, man, this is the next novel and I got to make it the best novel ever. That can actually really fuck you up writing wise. It can make you really tight, make you scared, timid. Like, I want to try to stay as loose as possible when writing stuff and just like, all right, this novel's going to be really fun. I'm going to have a great, like, it's almost like in working on that and then a Mandy thing, it just keeps me loose. It keeps me loose. It makes me take myself less seriously. And I just try to make sure to focus on like my job of just having great tight sentences, great rhythmic language, awesome characters I find really interesting and then relatable and entertaining. And I kind of trust my subconscious to put the color to it, which really does work. And I think Bizarro is definitely tapping into the subconscious. I think there's a difference between us and surrealists. I think surrealists are just all about the subconscious. They're like, fuck it, let the subconscious tell the story, where I focus on telling a great story and I let my subconscious add the like colorful, and emotional aspects to it. And I work hand in hand with that.
You mentioned earlier that Brian Keene played a part in what Mandy DeSaunders became. What's the story with that?
I was at a con, and this thing was blowing up. I mean, it was just blowing. I'm like, dude, I don't know what to do here, man. I mean, this is like making money, and this is, I'm going to start. I mean, and that was the thing. I signed on to do interviews like this, and I'm like, should I pretend to talk like a woman? And I asked him, like, dude, what do I do here, man? You've been doing this shit for a long time. He said, look, man, you got to, because that was the other thing too. Mandy got a lot of love from the gay community, and I've had my gay experiences, but I consider myself a straight guy when it comes down to it. So I don't label myself as bi or gay. So there was an ethical component too. So he just said, like, you gotta just say, look, I write erotica under this pen name, and I write this, Bizarro and YA and horror, whatever, as Christoph Paul. And that was really good advice, because it was great, actually. It just, just said, here, this is who I am, and this is what I write, and now I have two personalities, and they both have Facebook pages, and it worked out well. It worked out well. I think maybe I'd like to see Mandy try to write longer stuff down the road, like maybe even more mainstream stuff, just to see if I could do it. But that's something for later on.
Does how should I put this? Does Mandy take over when she's writing?
Yeah, man. I mean, it's like a battle. It's some Fight Club shit to a degree. I mean, Mandy's stories just have this like euphoric. It's like this idea that just consumes me, and I'm like, fuck. That'll happen. I'm like, God damn it. I'm like, no, Mandy, I don't want to write this right now. I got to write this. I got my own shit to write, and it's really just Mandy. Just it comes down to, it's almost like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or Fight Club. It's like there's a control in my body of who's going to write what. So it almost feels like I'm living with another person. And Mandy, like when she gets an idea, and it's like an idea she has to write, it's hard to just say no. I sound like a crazy person, but it really is. Like there's just this crazy Dionysus, I don't know what to really call it, like this just force in my mind. It's like, I have to write this story, and I have to write it right now. And as I'm trying to write more Christoph Paul stuff, I have to kind of learn how to work with that. So that's what I'm kind of doing this last 2 months, too. I just finished up another one. I actually read at CrawlCon, I read a short story called Gay Zombie Sluts in Key West, and I added more to it, which will become a Mandy story. So it's kind of interesting, too. I also see what stories are mine and what are Mandy's, which is interesting, like even older work.
Like she was already there, and you
it's like it's just a side of me. So I kind of see myself now writing. I love writing Bizarro. I'll always write Bizarro, and I'll write YA, and I really want to just write by Bizarro, YA Bizarro. That's kind of like where my heart is at, and I want to, the occasional Mandy novelette. I can't let the passion consume me. That's what I'm having to deal with now. I'm having to like balance it. Like I have to kind of like be like, no, Mandy, we can't right now. I promise we'll do it this weekend. It's weird. I mean, I feel like I got two people in my head, which has been hard. It's because Mandy, like that's been her thing. It's just like, no, I have to do this now. So now that I'm having more projects, it's like I can't right now, Mandy. It's like having it's weird. It's a weird thing. I hope I don't need more therapy because of it, but that's how I'm rolling.
Do you think Crocoduck, the success, can be repeated again, or do you think that time has passed?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I think so. I think I don't know if a book like to that extreme, to be honest with you. I would like to write a book myself with that amount of sales, I guess. I don't really want to say how many, but like, that kind of like just sales as myself, and maybe not have the crazy viral aspect of it. Because that's pretty hard to do, but you never know. But yeah, I mean, I think it'd be foolish for me to say no, that'll never happen again. I think you just have to believe, like, yeah, why not? Why the fuck not? Like, I think it just will come from a different place. Like, I think the moment I try to like do something that will forcibly be viral, I'm fucked. I mean, the thing about Mandy, where she's been successful, was like just doing these ideas that probably 95% of people would say that's the fucking dumbest idea I've ever heard. I mean, to write basically a gay erotica parody of a shitty literary novel, not a great idea. I mean, that's not been as viral as Crocoduck, but it did pretty well. And then, Crocoduck. It's just, it's trusting that part of yourself. And I think that's really hard for us as writers, is to just, kind of abandon that censor in your head and just go for it. And that was the thing I learned from the Mandy and the Crocoduck, is sometimes you just have to say fuck it and go for it and trust that part of you. So, and you have to learn what works and what doesn't, and trust the process. I mean, it might be that every 20th book I do is like a big hit as Mandy. I might have to write some stuff that just kind of, nobody really gives a fuck about. It doesn't really cost me any money. It costs me time, but that time is just me getting better at writing. So it's kind of, why not? Why not just keep doing it? And if I enjoy it and I get something out of it and I get paid for it, why the fuck not?
I agree. We just spoke to CV Hunt, and she sort of expressed the same sort of advice. She said, every time, I think that people are just not going to get this and not connected, and it's just going to be stupid, those stories have had the biggest impact.
Yeah.
And the most, resonance from them. So that's an important thing is to, like you said, lose that censure and just go with it.
Yeah, I think it's good to go to extremes to a degree. I mean, that's one thing I like. I try to keep improving my range and not just be defined by one thing. You're always have your base of stuff that's your comfort zone. It's like I know I love writing stuff that's satirical and humor, but I'm trying to keep pushing myself. What would be something different? And Mandy's a great way to do that. Like what's the last one was like pretty much like literary erotica, even though it was about Tila Tequila. It was like this epic, fucking erotic, like Anne Rice type story. And I tried it. It might just be for me. This thing probably will bomb. Not every Mandy book will like catch fire, but it's just about growing. And I think it's just really having faith in the process and like being true to that part of you that like can only tell the story that you can tell. And that's hard. That's hard when there's money involved at times, and you're like looking this to pay the bills, and it's finding a balance. It's finding a balance to stay loose and keep at it and keep hustling and just keep learning. Keep learning what works, what doesn't, and write as much as you can.
Now, what I like about you is you don't just trust viral to carry your marketing and Facebook and Twitter. I like to see that you're one of the guys that gets out there on the convention circuit hard.
Yeah,
pushes your stuff. How has that impacted your sales and your popularity? Get your name out there.
It definitely helps. I mean, my goal with these things is I want to just break even. That's it. Like I just want to cover the costs of driving, whatever it be, and just make enough money back. And that's advertising then. And it's always good. I mean, if you can go to a con, you can find a way to, try to really, I mean, it helps having more books now too. That like having the Mandy books and going to a con fucking helps a lot. Because people love to buy this shit at conventions. They'll just like, they'll buy the covers. I don't know if even some of them read it. They just want to like give it to their friend. But that book pays for the other books I want to write, And I love meeting other writers. I mean, I'm up here in like New Hampshire with my girlfriend. That's it. Like we live in it's a cheap ass, small ass town with nothing to do, which is probably why I do write a lot. And I edit and I help publish and, things of that nature. But cons, on so many levels, cons are important. Sometimes, like CrawlCon, I wish I could go this year. Like, it's just to go connect with friends, with other writers, other, artistic type people. It's good for your fucking soul. It really, this can be a very lonely business. Writers can be fickle. I will say that. Like, writers I was friends with 5 years ago, not friends with me anymore now. You know what I mean? That's one of the shitty parts of this thing. People come, people go. So making kind of lifelong friends is really, really important, and just to feel like you're not alone in this thing, because it can get really isolating.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, not only New Hampshire, New York, I have the same thing in New Jersey. It's like, where do you go? They don't have local bookstores really here,
yeah.
And conventions are severely lacking. So
absolutely,
something that Jordan Crawl does is put together this little Crawl Con, and it's an awesome place.
Awesome con. Yeah. I mean, I'm really bummed that I can't go. It's just too con. I gotta go. I'm going to AWP, but it's like, next year, like hell or high water, I will go to CrawlCon. Like, there's just a few cons, like CrawlCon, Bizarro Con, and Camp Nikon. Those are like my big three. Like those keep me fucking sane. I need those. So yeah, and there's no cons during the winter, so this is always a rough time.
Yeah, it's con season. It's coming up. You also podcast. You were podcasting. It sounds like you're restarting your podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to restart with Lisa and I. I just took a break. I mean, it's just I've been really swamped, man. I mean, because I've been I'm starting a press and I'm helping edit for Clash Class Books, and with the press I started with Grant Womack. I mean, I've been doing a lot of shit. It's pretty fucking nuts. But yeah, I want to bring the passion back, the passion of the Christoph podcasts. I listen to yours. I listen to Brian Keene's. I love Jeff Burke's podcast. That I think that's a great new one. And I enjoy it. I just don't. I can't be the one man show anymore. So I kind of talk to Lisa, my girlfriend. I'm like, let's do a podcast together. We're always bullshitting and arguing about art and TV and books and people. Why don't we record this and then have guests? So yeah, I'm gonna start that again. We're gonna try to record it and have something out either this week or the next week. I gotta see.
Looking forward to it. I do another podcast with a buddy of mine, same sort of thing. We're able to sit down face to face and record, and having that person there across from you interacting directly, it's a lot different experience. It's a lot more fun. That's how I started podcasting, and switching up to the solo thing where I'm kind of staring at the wall. It's a different sort of thing, and there's a different sort of comfort zone, but it's really fun to bounce off two people right there in front of you. It's a great dynamic.
So yeah, and it's just Great White House 2 is coming out this month. It's just kind of finalizing some things for that. I'm really fucking excited. The cover reveal will be coming soon, and cover's fucking beautiful. Justin T. Coons. It's going to be with Clash Books, kind of new press. Jamie Cade started out in Boston, so it's kind of cool. So it's local. It's kind of fun to work with like a local press, and I do stuff for them. So it's kind of like cool collective press. And yeah, he's like, Dad, I'm game. Because I was like wondering where should I put Great White House 2 with. And I'm working on. I can say this. This is all I'll say. I'm working on a new Bizarro book that involves cosplay, and that's all I'll say. And I don't know. I'm pretty fucking excited about it.
That sounds good.
I'm pretty excited. So yeah, man. I keep on trucking, as they say.
Absolutely. Well, that's unfortunately all the time we're going to have for you on this episode. I really appreciate you coming on and giving the skinny on all this great Christoph Paul stuff and Mandy DeSandra.
It was fun, man. Dude, I thank you so much for having me on. I tried to just keep it real. I always worry, like, oh, man, I hope I don't sound like an asshole. But I wanted to just, say my piece and answer your questions and, have fun with this, And this was a lot of fun, man. I really enjoyed this.
We love having you on. You don't come off as an asshole. You're a lot of fun, and I'm sure everybody out there in Bizarro land will enjoy having heard you.
Right on, man. Right on.
All right, so I wish you continued success. Have a great time out at AWP. That's probably going to be pretty huge for you. And, down the line, we'll definitely have you back on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Zongers, Christoph Paul. Was I right or was I right? I mean, when the guy talks about his podcast, The Passion of the Christoph, he even has a book out called Passion of the Christoph. That's what you hear in his voice. Tons and tons of passion for the craft and writing weird and bizarre fiction. I mean, the guy just defended screwed up erotica, bizarre erotica, by just pointing out that, it seems weird, but that just lends that constant fast spitting out of ridiculous things can only help you as a writer to constantly do that. So with that in mind, that's another episode of Bizzong in the books. It's time we must leave, but I, again, must ask you, implore you, if you like Bizzong, please follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Bizzong, or on Twitter at Bizzong Podcast. Share the links for these shows if you love the show. Help spread the word that the Church of Bizzong is open for business, and we're spreading the words, giving out love. Don't forget, if you also enjoy the show and you got $1 a month to give us $1 over at patreon.com/Project iRadio. Lots of great donation levels and rewards over there. Go check it out and give what you can, what you're comfortable with. So until next week, Zongers, don't forget to check out some of these other great Project iRadio podcasts.
Token Tom Clark here, host of the Curtain Jerkers, Project I Radio's podcast that dumps pro wrestling journalism on its noggin. Between my co-hosts, Brody Kratz and Examiner Steve Mesa, keep you up to date on all the news in the universe of pro wrestling. Focus on the up-and-coming guys on the indie circuit, the real curtain jerkers of this industry. You can only hear us rant and laugh every Tuesday on Project I Radio.
Armcast, dead, sexy horror podcast with host Armand Rosamilia, where he interviews horror authors, filmmakers, actors, actresses, that hot dog guy outside of Walmart, maybe even a Walmart greeter. Who knows? That's Armcast Podcast, exclusively on Project I Radio.